But right now, let's go straight across to the India Today Conclave 2010 live with James Cameron and Aamir Khan.
Both are driven not by money and fame alone, but the pursuit of impossible goals. And to take a line from Avatar, James, I see you. So a warm welcome to both of you, both Mr. James Cameron and Mr. Aamir Khan. Thank you for being here with us. I met Mr. James Cameron recently in Davos this year. He wouldn't remember it. I was fortunately seated next to him at dinner. And for 2 hours, he just had me riveted on the table. And he must be wondering, what is this Indian asking me so many questions for? You know, now he knows. This was the reason. If he was anything like that day, let me tell you, you have a long and fascinating night ahead of you. You never know, he may speak in Navi for you. What could one say about James Cameron that has not been said better by him? Yes, he's king of the world, not just because his new film has become the biggest blockbuster in the history of cinema, beating his own film, Titanic. Not just because the box office receipts of Avatar, sorry, I say Avatar, not Avatar, the first action blockbuster to be made in 3D and twice the revenues made by Bollywood in a year. Not just because he's the internal outsider who loves scaring Hollywood studios to death. Terminator 2 in 1991 was the first film to cost $100 million. Titanic in 1997 was the first one to exceed $200 million. And Avatar, his first feature film in 12 years, clocked at $230 million. Of course, we all know Terminator 2 also made $519 million worldwide. Titanic made a Titanic $1.8 billion. And Avatar has made $2 billion, and he's still counting. His movies have everything. They've given us iconic lines that have become part of pop culture, whether it is I'll Be Back from The Terminator or Hasta la Vista Baby from Terminator 2, I'm the King of the World from Titanic, and as I said, or I See You in Avatar. They've given us superwomen like Ellen Ripley, who fought aliens, saved the world like Sarah Connor, and nurtured alternative universes like Neyatiri. They've also given us the Governator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Ladies and gentlemen, James Cameron is the man who saw tomorrow. He's a visionary who has perfected the art of narrative and blended it with a fantastic grasp of technology. What else explains the universal wonder that greeted the 9-foot-tall blue people with swishing tails and pointy ears who danced with dangling mountains, six-legged thanatours, milky spores, and lush plants, all 125 years in the future? What else explains the unwavering attention that welcomed Titanic, which was essentially a simple story of a poor boy and a rich girl who meet on a ship that everyone knew is going to sink? They fall in love but can never meet again. It was a flawless execution of a simple story where you felt like a passenger on the Grand Titanic. James Cameron is a genius because he makes us believe. He brings his characters to life even if they're encased in metal body suits and speak English as a foreign language like Schwarzenegger in The Terminator. He brings worlds to life like the awe-inspiring Pandora from Avatar. He brings words to life, making them leap off the screen and inhabit 3D screens from Africa to America. His Pandoran creatures speak a language he developed with linguists inspired by fragments of Maori he picked up in New Zealand years ago. And funnily, for a director of such huge blockbusters, he uses movies to send a message, whether it is about dehumanization in The Terminator or environmentalism and anti-colonialism in Avatar. He started out as an action director of testosterone-driven science fiction movies like Aliens, then made the ultimate chick flick, Titanic, and finally made a cross-generational, trans-cultural movie that Greens would be proud of, Avatar. Like everyone else, I want to know what makes his brilliant mind work. Not just because Titanic, which picked up 11 Oscars, was as Bollywood as it gets, and Avatar is a Sanskrit word, and the Pandoran creatures look suspiciously drawn from Hindu mythology. He once said, "If you set your goals ridiculously high, it's a failure. You fall above everyone else's success." That gives us a clue about James Cameron. Here's a man who was born in Canada, one of 5 children, whose hero was the scientist-explorer Jacques Cousteau, which would explain his obsession with water. He dropped out of Fullerton College to drive a truck, started work with Roger Corman, the man whose studio was a training ground for filmmakers such as Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, and Jonathan Demme, and then sold his screenplay of The Terminator for $1 because he was determined to direct it himself. He's an adventurer who loves deep-sea diving and is the first one when there are sharks in the water. He's an artist who started by designing sets. He's an inventor who's developed 5 patents for scuba diving equipment with his brother Mike while working on The Abyss, and who shot Avatar using camera systems he worked on himself. He's a pioneer of special effects. The water column of The Abyss and the liquid silver man of Terminator 2 sparked off a digital revolution. Avatar alone, and I was reading, had 3,000 effect shots, some of which Cameron reviewed as many as 20 times. He's a risk taker, as his decision to go 3D with Avatar shows within 3 years the number of 3D screens in the US has tripled to 4,500. He's a perfectionist, though he prefers the word rightist, who learned to use guns when he was researching The Terminator, and he went to Russia to train for a flight aboard Soyuz because he wanted to spend 30 days at the International Space Station to do a spacewalk and film it in 3D. He is, as Steven Spielberg, his great contemporary, calls him, a technobrat, who is also a very emotional storyteller. And we are today very fortunate to have this great storyteller here in person to tell us his story. But before he does that, I'd like to introduce our other chief guest. Here's a man who's broken with convention, who may not like swimming with the sharks like Cameron, but certainly likes swimming against the tide, who's been part of the nation's consciousness in one avatar or another for over 2 decades, who defies the logic of mainstream cinema that you have to be silly to be successful. His first film in 1988, a candy floss romance, where his hair was almost as long as that of the actress, came at a time when action films were at their peak, and audiences had practically stopped going to theaters. For his first production, he made a 3-hour, 40-minute-long movie about cricket in colonial India in Awadhi, Lagan, which became only the second film to be nominated for the Best Foreign Language Film at the Academy Awards in 2001. For his directorial debut, he made a tiny movie about a child with dyslexia, Tara Zameen Par, where he appears as an actor only in the second half. The film became a reference point for educational institutions and was used widely to educate people on dyslexia. And then his latest film, the biggest blockbuster in history of Indian cinema, was an ensemble feature which was not so veiled mockery of the education system in India. Aamir's films have always go beyond just entertainment, but their compelling message is sugar-coated in such great Bollywood masala that they have a lasting impact. And what's more, they make money. He's also like James Cameron. He's beaten his own record. His earliest film was Gajni, which was also a blockbuster, and he's gone and beaten that with 3 Idiots. Aamir has always been a maverick, choosing to assist his uncle, a very well-known director in the 60s and 70s, rather than attend college, deciding to do 1 film a year when his contemporaries were shooting for 4 different films in 1 day. He's the insider by lineage, but the outsider by the bent of mind, always doing what his heart tells him. With an instinctive grasp of what works in a story, he has also turned into a prolific producer, whose most recent film is a biting satire on farmer suicide in India, which did exceedingly well at the Sundance and Berlin film festivals. He's India's most consistent box office star. He's been a lead actor for 22 years, which for an industry where stars burn brightly but briefly is extraordinary. His characters have been memorable, whether it is the fun-loving, street-smart do-nothing in Rangila or the unbending police officer combating terrorism in Sarfrosh. What I've always liked as an inveterate weekend moviegoer is that Aamir Khan movie usually delivers on its promise of entertainment. You know you will get a story well told, characters well thought out, and entertainment that ends up informing as well. A teen idol, a romantic hero, an avenging angel, and in his most recent incarnation, a rebel with a cause in a career blessed with critical acclaim and commercial success. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Aamir Khan.